My name's Callum Carver, and at 21 years old, I built a business that makes me just over $1.2 million a year, all thanks to one skill. And the crazy part is that I didn't have to go to college or university to learn this. I didn't have to start some business model. I didn't need a ton of money to start, and well, you can do exactly the same. You see, mastering a skill is like leveling up in a game. As you start off, you face bosses and challenges, and as you grow and you work through the game, you have to face bigger challenges and bigger bosses. But here's the catch. What works at one level will not always work at the next. For example, for me, my whole journey started off on TikTok. I saw this TikTok video of someone talking about a business model, and I thought, well, I'll jump on that. And I started making TikTok videos trying to promote other people's products so that I could get a commission if someone bought the product through my link. And I had no idea what I was doing. There was no business plan in mind. There was no scaling to 1 million in the back of my head. It was a case of how can I make $2.70 per referral that I actually get? That was all that was in my mind. And in doing that over and over and over again, I made my first $100, possibly $1,000 after probably about 3 months of trying it. But it didn't work, and that's the point. It didn't work, and I didn't stop. I pivoted and I continued. So at that point, I took my skills and I thought, right, I understand social media a little bit better now. I've been posting on it for a while. Why don't I go and help restaurants and companies run their own social media? Makes sense, right? And so that's what I did. I went round to the local restaurants in my area and asked them to run their social media, and that started my next step. Business works exactly the same way. The skills that you use to make your first $100 online compared to your first 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 are completely different. And in my case, there are a few key fundamental skills that I had to learn in order to hit my first 10K month, and without those skills, I wouldn't have unlocked the kind of ultimate skill that got me to over $1 million a year. So in this video, I'm gonna walk you through those skills that laid the foundation to get me my first $1,000, $10,000, and also go through the kind of ultimate skill, as I call it, that makes me over $1 million a year at 21 years old. And of course, I'm gonna show you how you can do the same. So make sure you stick to the end of this video, because I'll also be giving you some resources that are gonna help you hit your first 100K a year. So let's start from the basics. I'm gonna run you through how to hit your first 10K month. And I know it sounds extremely out of reach, but as I explain it, you'll kind of understand it. It's not as hard as you think. It's a few kind of big, bold steps that you need to make away. But to be completely honest, the roadmap to your first 10K is a game of trial and error. You've got to try as many things as you possibly can and fail as many times as you possibly can, because with failure, you learn. You understand what works, you understand what doesn't work, and you can tweak and improve from where you are. And I'm not only going to explain how you can do it yourself, but I'm going to run you through my story of how I went from nothing to over 100K a month at 21, so you can actually get some real world first-hand examples of how you can do it yourself. And that business venture of managing company social media took me to my first 5K a month. After a lot of trial and error, probably about 20 different clients, I hit my first 5K month. And I continue to pivot and adapt. I continue to look for the next big opportunity, the next best thing that I could kind of jump on and use my current skill set that I had from growing on social media and managing social media and put it towards the next big lever. But to be honest, I was pretty lost. I didn't see a future in what I was doing managing social media, and also I tried the business models. I tried SMA, I tried dropshipping, and none of them seemed to work. What I did do, however, was I started to reach out to business owners and ask them what they needed. I quite literally asked that question: what do you need and how can I help you and what will you pay money for? Because doing it this way, I was able to get first-hand feedback from someone in a position who I wanted to sell to, asking what they wanted. And in my brain, the plan was simple. I found out what they need, I create a solution to their problem, I sell them the solution. And well, that's exactly what I did. And for me, that birthed the start of my next business venture, which was social media influencer pooling. I used my skills of being an influencer since I started posting on TikTok to try and get referrals. I also used my skills of social media management, and I thought, how can I put this 2 and 2 together to start another business? And so I started an influencer marketing agency where I would actually help companies use influencers to promote their brands on social media. And the key here is that I was continuously using my previous skill set to put towards my new skill set and adapting and improving as I went on. And so with the mix of my previous skill sets and my willingness to learn, I learned the whole influencer marketing business model. And well, I scaled that agency pretty successfully. I scaled it way past 10K per month, where I was actually building and growing my own business. I was learning from people that were further ahead from me. I was connecting with like-minded people to further boost my skills and my experience. And a combination of doing this and most importantly, using my previous skill set, I was able to scale to 10, 20, even 30K per month. And well, once I started making 10K a month consistently with it, I started talking about it on social media. And of course, the natural reaction to that was people asking how I did it. And so what I did is I built out a kind of community training program, just explaining breaking everything down and how I did it, pieced it all together. And then I ended up selling that community. You know, your typical course seller, but it was way back in the day, probably about 2.5 years ago now. And I remember the point of selling that community, when I launched it, I made about 10K in 16 days from people joining, which again opened up an entirely new avenue of ideas and potential that I could now jump onto. And over time, I started to really catch on to that. I started to realize that, hold up, I am doing this with my own skills, with my own expertise, using the exact same framework every single time. The same framework that got me to my first $1,000 in a month, the same framework that got me to my first 5, the same framework that got me to my first 10, and even the same framework across social media. I identified my audience's problems, I created a solution to it, they wanted to make money, I created a platform teaching them how to make money, and I sold that solution. And although I didn't realize it at the time, I was using the skill to profit framework. Every single time I was turning a skill into money, which is important to make a note of as it kind of comes around a bit later on and makes a kind of full loop moment. But at that point, at 10, 20K a month, I was making it pretty consistently. Sometimes it would drop below, sometimes it would go above, but it was kind of around that number. And then at that point, I kind of had to ask myself the question, right, if I want to scale beyond this, I want to scale to 100K plus, or actually at this point it was 50K, then to 100K a month, I've got to choose an avenue and I've got to go out full speed ahead with this avenue. And one option was my influencer marketing agency, and the other option was my content creation and a coaching program that I was building around what I was doing. Now, with the influencer marketing, I didn't really see as much potential. I didn't see the scalability to getting to 50, 100K a month, unless I wanted to massively build out my team and have a bunch more stress on my shoulders, because now I had to manage a $1 million a year agency, which to be honest, I didn't really want to do. And so I put all of my focus towards trying to teach other people similar to me how they could actually grow their influencer marketing business to a substantial level. That was my entire focus. And I did that for about 6 months. I was running the coaching program. People were winning left, right, and center. The chats were lighting up. It was incredibly active. People were loving it. But then I came to a realization. I came to a realization that although it works for a lot of people, it also doesn't work for a lot of people. And you know, your goal as a business owner is to improve your product as much as you possibly can. And I couldn't figure out how to improve my product because my product was built around my experiences, what I'd done, what I tried, what had worked, what hadn't. And I realized that, you know, it doesn't work for some people, it doesn't work for others. And I couldn't put my finger on why that was. And after a lot of reflecting and a lot of sleepless nights, I finally came to the realization that the reason it works for some people, including me, and the reason it doesn't work for others is because it's not a business that you can start off as a beginner. You see, the reason it works for me is because I didn't just start influencer marketing out of the blue. I built my influencer marketing business and agency based on the previous skills I'd had from trying other ventures and running the different businesses, which meant that someone going from zero to having an entire agency, all the operations, all the moving pieces that comes into running an agency, they just couldn't do it. It was almost impossible. Because at this point, you're not learning a business, you're learning about 10, 15, 20 different skills that all come together to run the business. Because influencer marketing isn't just influencer marketing, but it's project management, it's people management, it's marketing, it's sales, it's copywriting, it's about 15 other skills that it requires you to be good at to actually run this business. And the reason it wasn't working for a lot of people inside my coaching program was because they didn't have these skill sets. They didn't have the foundations that they needed to actually build on top of and build this agency. And that was probably one of the most difficult points of my entrepreneurship journey, because I had to actually make a decision. Do I do this knowing that only 50% of people will actually succeed? Or actually, in fact, it was probably less than that because some people, you know, they're not built for it. Or do I pivot to something that I feel like will work for more people? And that is when I had to make the hard decision. I either had to start from scratch with something new, or I had to continue what I was doing knowing that it's not going to work for everyone. And so I made a decision. I made a decision to start from scratch with something new. I made a decision to stop teaching this business model, stop trying to make people go from nothing to 10K with an agency that they don't have the skills required to actually run. And what I did instead is I went back to the drawing board. I went back to the drawing board in my own journey, my own life, and really thought about, how did I get to the point of where I'm at now? What were the trials and tribulations I had to go through? What were the things I had to learn? And what were the things that did and didn't work? And that's when I realized that it's been staring me in the face all along. What I've realized is that I didn't make money with a business model. No, I made money with my skill set, my skills that I had learned and developed over time, over trials and tribulations. That's what I built into an agency. And the reason it wouldn't work for other people was because they didn't have the same journey as me. They didn't have to go through the same ups and downs and learn the same foundations and principles that I did. And so that's when I set my sights on building out the skill to profit framework, the actual framework that I use myself to go from nothing to actually having my own agency, the ups and downs that I had to go through. And believe it or not, but when I started learning about this in more detail, I realized that this is the most common thing that everyone does. All of the big business players in the space, they use the exact same framework. They use the exact same strategies and methods to get to where they're at. Whether you're talking about Alex Hormozy, Charlie Morgan, Iman Gadzhi, they all use this basic structure. And in fact, I knew this structure worked so well, so it was the same structure that I used to go from 10K to 100K a month. And this was the very, very basics of it. Firstly, you have to start with a skill. No matter what skill it is, it doesn't have to be impressive. You don't have to be insane at it. You just have to start with a skill. For me, it was social media management. That was my skill. That was my starting point. You then have to identify a market. You have to identify a market that you can actually sell your skill to, a market that needs it and will pay good money for it. Thirdly, you have to turn that skill into a service. You actually have to make it be able to deliver a result for the market. And I use the exact same framework to build up the influencer marketing agency. In fact, I asked business owners what their problems were, which was to identify a problem that I could solve. I then used my current skill set. I knew what market I wanted to sell it to because I already asked them what problems they had, and then I built a service around it. And then the next step, of course, was to actually start selling that service. It's to actually go out in front of them. I used to walk into restaurants in my area, walk in with a suit and tie on and a laminated piece of paper and say, hey, I want to do social media management for you. That was my way of selling it. But then I improved and I tweaked. So now when I was running my influencer marketing agency, I would be jumping on sales calls with companies from anywhere to 1 million a year to billions and billions a year. And I realized that that is what got me to my first $1,000, my first $2,000, my first $10,000, $20,000, $50,000. It was using the skill to profit framework, the exact same thing that I now started teaching to other people. I started teaching people how to actually identify your skill, your core thing, your key thing that makes you special. Find a market that you can sell it to, learn how to actually sell it to that market and deliver a result. And after doing that, I found that results skyrocketed. People actually started winning. It wasn't just 20, 30% of people that were succeeding, but it was 70, 80% of people that I was teaching would succeed with what I was teaching because, again, they weren't starting a business model from scratch. They were using their skills, developing their skills, and building a service around it. Take Charlie, for example. He was one of my very first students in my Skill to Profit cohort that I launched as a tester to see how it would work. And now he makes almost £20,000 a month, so well over $20,000 a month with the skill of copywriting and webinar building. And when he started with me, he had nothing. He was starting from scratch. But the point was that we used the Skill to Profit framework to scale from where he was to where he is. And this same framework will scale you to your first $1,000 a month, but it will also scale you to your first $100,000 a month if you use it correctly. But what is the skill? What is the ultimate skill that took me from my first $10,000, $20,000 a month to my first $100,000 a month? Well, the ultimate skill that took me to that point is this. Content creation. The skill that allowed me to surpass $1 million a year is content creation and the ability to build a personal brand. Because when you're able to build a personal brand, you're able to build a sense of authority. You're able to actually use your current skill set, which you have to actually build off, and create content around it. You can scale infinitely. And the reason being is because, think about it, content creation, having a personal brand is the best form of leverage you can possibly have. And this doesn't mean that you have to sell a course or sell a program. No. You can use the idea of a personal brand to actually help you scale your business. Let's say, for example, your skill is graphic design and you've used the Skill to Profit framework to actually take your skill of graphic design to turn it into an agency. Content creation is what can take that agency and spread it anywhere in the world. It can get it in front of anybody's eyeballs. It can convey any message that you want it to convey. And that is what will help you scale your business. Or let's say you're a video editor, for example. Your personal brand, creating content, is what's going to allow you to take your skills and put it out there into the world. Whether you want to teach that skill or sell that skill is completely up to you, but having a personal brand gives you that leverage. It gives you that ability to show it to whoever you want and sell it in whatever way you want to sell it. And for me, that's what I did. I used this personal brand to explode the message of the Skill to Profit framework and explain to other people how you can take a singular skill and turn it into a business. And now my business that makes me over $1.2 million a year is a coaching program and a consultancy that actually helps people take any skill and turn it into a fully fledged business. And without this personal brand, without having this leverage that I have, no one would know about it. I wouldn't have a business at all. Because a personal brand is what allows you to reach as many people as you want to reach when you want to reach them. It's not a case of, oh, if I have a service, I need to reach out to companies one-to-one to sell my service. No, having a personal brand allows you to reach anyone and everyone. Of course, you have to get good at creating content. That is another skill you have to stack. But it's the principle, it's the ability of what you can do. And so how does this work with any skill? How can you actually use this information that I've given you to grow your own business to ideally, 100K plus bucks a month, or even your first 10K. Here's how you get started. Firstly, you've got to start with a skill, any skill. It has to be a high income skill, something you can sell to people that's in demand. Secondly, you've got to use a skill to profit framework. You've got to use the framework that's going to help you take that skill, turn it into an agency, some kind of business, something that you can actually sell to people, whether you're teaching it to people, as I'm doing now, or you're selling it to companies or individuals or coaches, no matter what it is. You need to use a skill to profit framework to lay the foundation so you have a business. Then to excel that business, to pour the fuel onto the fire, the accelerant, that's where you use content creation. That's where you use the ability to build a personal brand, to explode your message, explode your presence. You build trust, you build authority, you build social proof. And that's how you can turn a singular skill into $1 million a year business. Well, that's how I did it anyway. And I would highly, highly, highly recommend that you do exactly the same. And I hope you found this video insightful. And if you did, you're probably expecting me to pitch you like a $1,000 course right about now. No, I'm not going to. But what I am going to do is I'm going to recommend that you watch the 1-hour free course that I recently put out, which actually teaches you the skill to profit framework in detail. So it teaches you how I went from nothing to my first 10, 20,000 a month, building my agency, using my skill sets, and exactly how you can do the same in excruciating detail, to the very, very minor details to the broad overview. That's going to give you your start. That's going to allow you to go from nothing to something. And then when you're ready, when you're at the point where you want to scale, you want to explode, that's when you implement content creation into it. That's when you start building a personal brand. But again, there is no point in you worrying about how to scale to 1 million a year when you haven't hit your first, 10K a month, 1K a month, $100 a month, whatever it may be. Go watch that video, learn how to turn your skills into profit, and I promise you it will change your life for the better. So click here and I'll see you there.